pray everybody is doing well. I know you're probably asking yourself right now, Samuel, what are you doing up at this hour inside of the UK? And guys, I don't really know how to answer that question. So, as a result, I thought I'd hop on live and add some value because, as mentioned, I was up and I thought, you know what, this is what I should do. So, with that being said, let me start by asking you a simple question. And that question is, have you ever felt like the property game is rigged against you? Okay. If that's you, just write me in the chat if you've ever felt as though the property game is rigged against you. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, we just currently finished a little while ago our day 4 of the cash flow creation week, and it was a super powerful session. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm probably still up right now, because just how much value was shared, how much insights were shared, and kind of what it had me thinking and, pondering on throughout the session, and just literally thinking to myself, wow, like this is super, super powerful. So a specific thought actually came to me, and I said to myself, you know what, let me not keep it to myself, let me share it with the community to assist other people to move further faster in their journey as well. So wherever you're joining me from, guys, first and foremost, do what we do, throw in your heys, your hellos, your welcomes, where you're tuning in from, or if you guys want, we can get interactive with it and we can throw the map up on here. So guys, let me know where you're tuning in from in the world, wherever you're tuning in from. If you're someone in the UK, I get it. Like, you want to pretend that you're not awake right now. So feel free to not write UK. It's okay. But if you're from anywhere else, feel free to throw in the chat where you're joining me from. Are you in the UK? Are you in the US of A? Are you in Australasia? Are you in Asia? Wherever you are, feel free to throw in the chat where you are joining from so I can welcome you inside of this session. Now, for those of you who are moving in covert and you're going to say to yourself, you know what, I'm watching so I can see the view count, but I'm not commenting. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I understand. I totally understand. All right. So I'm going to jump into what I've got to share for you guys, regardless of whether you guys are going to be upstanding citizens or not. And I pray that you take a lot of value from what I'm going to be sharing, because I'm going to be sharing with you guys in this specific session, in this specific video, how the UK property game, how the US property game, how the mainstream property game is rigged against you. Now, you might be thinking, Samuel, the game must be rigged against someone else. It can't be rigged against me. I've built a portfolio. I know what I'm doing. I've made some money. It must be someone else you're talking to. It must be someone else you're talking about. And I'm here to tell you the truth. The truth is, I'm talking to you. I'm talking about you. And I'm going to show you how the UK game is rigged against you, how the UK property game and the US property game is rigged against you. Now, like I said, I'll say it again one more time. Wherever you guys are joining me from, feel free to throw in the chat as you jump in where you are joining from. Feel free to jump in the chat where you're joining from. And as you guys do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight into what's actually going on to make the game rigged against you. And hopefully, after I share this with you, you'll be someone who the game will no longer be rigged against. Hopefully, if that's fair, just throw the word fair in the chat. Now, I want to start to illustrate this by sharing with you part of a journey that we've all experienced, or most of us experience if we're old enough, and how we may not even see that this is exactly what's going on. All right. So a number of years ago, when I was young, when I was like a baby kind of thing, right, my dad used to listen to music on a record. Okay, he used to listen to music on records. So we had LPs, long plays, we had records, right? And let me try and draw a kind of James Brown character right here. Get up, get on down. Okay, so this is my kind of rendition of a James Brown character. So a number of years ago, when I was a little seedling, my parents, my mum, my dad would listen to music on a record player. And they'd listen to music which came in the form of records. Now, let's do this illustration in 3D to help you guys, right? Let's say at the time my mom and dad were listening to music on records, that there was a lady, okay, and we're gonna call, for the sake of this illustration, we're gonna call this lady Jill, okay, and let's say Jill was working in a record making factory, okay, so Jill works in a factory where they make records, okay, and the amount of time, which is super, where this gets super interesting, the amount of time that records were being used for us to listen to music was around 35, let's round it up, let's call it 30 years. So for 30 years, close to a whole generation, people were listening to music on records. If someone can attest to that, if there's anyone who's tuned in who says, you know what, Samuel, I remember those days, or you know what, Samuel, I was in those days, all right? You don't have to give away your age, but just let me know, right? So 30 years ago, the way people listened to music was through means of record. And if, for example, there was a lady named Jill who worked in a record making store and she was making records in her day-to-day work, and this illustration is going to help you understand how the property game is rigged. My question is, what would happen when the inevitable happened? And we all know what the inevitable was. Let me even draw this line a bit shorter. The inevitable was when those 30 years kind of came to an end, and then we moved from listening to records in order to listen to music to listening to cassette tapes. Now I know some of you are going to be saying, Samuel, cassette tapes, that's way too far back. Yeah, it may be way too far back, but it's a time that happened. And here's my question. What happened? What happened when we went from listening to music on the record player to listening to music via cassette tapes in your Walkmans? I don't know if anyone remembers the Walkman, just write in the comments. I do, because we transitioned from a season and from a place where we were listening to all our music on records. My parents were listening to all their music on records. And then there was this revolution, this breakthrough, this brand new technology. And that brand new technology, which now seems super old, that breakthrough technology was the cassette tape. Now, I remember how annoying those cassette tapes were, especially when the tape would all get out and janky and you'd have to scroll it back and roll it through and you look for the pencil to screw it in. Now, here's the thing I want you to understand. The property game is rigged against you because the property game works exactly the same as this illustration that I'm giving you. So here's a question for you. If Jill works in a record making company, a company where they make records, and we listen to music on records, on LP, on long play for 30 years, here's my question. What happens to Jill when we no longer listen to records and we now listen to the same music on the tape? Someone tell me in the chat, what happens to Jill? If you're watching this on a replay, let me know in the comments. What happens to Jill? Okay? Because typically when I run through this illustration with clients, with students, they tell me, you know what? Jill is going to be out of a job. And guess what? They're 100% correct. Jill is going to be out of the job. Jill's going to no longer be able to work. She's going to have no opportunity to work simply because Jill's predicament extremely changes. What changes Jill's predicament so much? The major thing that changes Jill's predicament is the time has moved on. Oh, someone's catching this already. So let's go deeper. So we went, after spending 30 years of listening to music via records, into an era where we started to listen to music via cassette tape. So if you're someone who's in real estate in the USA, if you're in real estate in Australia, if you're in real estate in the UK, you should start to understand exactly what I'm talking about right now, because eras change, times change. And as those times change, your skills cannot remain the same. If your skills remain the same, when times change, just like Jill, you end up being out of the job. Just like Jill, you end up no longer being able to keep up with the times. Now, why is this important? This is important because so many changes are taking place right now. In 2017, in the UK specifically, there were changes to tax. Section 21 was rolled out, and it was rolled out on a staggered rollout. which means by 2020, the full depth of Section 21 will start hitting people's financial purses. Okay, so that was Section 21 tax change. Now we're having changes as of 2024, which apply to evictions. Now they're abolishing Section 21. Now you can't evict people for no reason. Okay, so all of these changes, I want you to understand, these changes are the processes, just like how we went from listening to music on a record to how they went to listening to music on a cassette tape. If someone understands what I'm talking about, just write in the comments, I do, so I know you're getting this. Now, here's the thing that's interesting. When we stopped listening to music on the record player, we started listening to music on the cassette tape, but something interesting happened. We didn't listen to music on the cassette tape forever. We only listened to music on the cassette tape for a certain period of time. Let's call it roughly 20 years. And what happened then? Well, you guys know what happened then. 20 years of listening to music on the cassette tape, and then times are changing, sir. We transitioned. We transitioned to what? We transitioned to starting to listen to music on the CD, otherwise known as the compact disc. And guys, please don't judge me in light of my drawings and diagrams. Okay, my name is Samuel Akinwin, not Picasso. So that is a CD. Let me even write this, because otherwise you guys are going to be laughing at me. Okay, that's a CD. This is a tape. Okay, and this was the record. So we shifted out of the record era, which we were in for 30 years. We shifted into the cassette tape era, which we were in for around 20 years. And then we shifted into the CD era. So here's my question again, right? And it's a new question because we're in a new era, but it's the same question. And my question is, what happens to Jill's skills now? You see, when Jill was creating records in the record factory, everything was cool for 30 years. But then when we started to listen to the same music, but on a different medium, in a new era, listening to the same music now in cassette tapes, what happened to Jill? Typically, when I ask that question, people tell me she's going to lose her job. She's going to be at risk. She's going to be made redundant. And I usually agree. But what happens now? What happens when we're even further along? When now it's not just the cassette tape era that has created a wipeout for the record era, but now there's also the CD era that has created a double whammy of wipeout for the record era. What happens now? What happens to Jill? Let me know in the comments. What happens to Jill? Let me know in the chat. What happens to Jill? Because this is super funny. And once you get a handle of this, not only do you start to understand how the property game is rigged against you, but you also start to understand how you can navigate in order to not be rolled over, steamed over, and leftovers as a result of the property game being rigged against you. So yes, the property game may have started in the proverbial time like the record era when everybody listened to their music via record. But things transitioned, and it transitioned even in business, in property, into the cassette tape era, a time where now people are using a different medium. This can be symbolized by tax changes. This can be symbolized by eviction changes. This can be symbolized by strategy changes. Straight after the tape era, we transition now into the CD era. Now, there's more. Someone write in the comments, but there's more. And the reason there's more is because we didn't stop at the CD era. If the tape era was bad enough, causing Jill's skill to be undesirable, what happens when we get to the CD era? It becomes even worse. It becomes even more untenable for Jill, okay? But there's more. Well, Samuel, where's the more? Here's the more. Because we didn't listen to CDs indefinitely. Today, if you're listening to music, the likelihood you're listening to a CD is very, very unlikely, I would assume. Okay? Now, I still have CDs, I'm going to be honest. I actually still have cassette tapes as well. Maybe I should show you guys, because I know some people, the young audience, the extremely young audience, they might not believe that there's still such thing as CDs. These are CDs. This is a CD set. Okay, this is, let me show you. Let's keep it real. Okay, CDs, cassettes. Okay, Samuel Akinwin has it all. I'm just keeping it real. Okay, I'm gonna take out some of the extra bonus CDs rather than the main CD set for this. But right here, this is a CD, guys. Compact disc. That's what it's called. CD stands for compact disc. I got CDs, right? I've got CDs. I got CD players as well, but it's even crazier to still have a CD player than it is to have a CD. Okay? If there's anyone who's in the live right now, or anyone who's watching on a replay who has CDs in their house, just throw the letter CDs or the letter CD in the chat. Okay? Now I don't have my cassette tapes here. I got more CDs here. These are more CDs, right? Another CD package here. Okay? I don't have my cassette tapes here in the library behind me, but in my actual library on the other side of the studio, I do have a whole bunch of cassette tapes, like tons and tons of cassette tapes from multiple cassette tape programs that I have purchased over the years. So I still got cassette tapes and I've still got CDs, okay? But the likelihood of me using them is radically reduced because times are changing, because times have changed, because things have moved on, because we're in a different echelon, all right? Now, if this is helpful for someone, just write me in the chat so I know that this is helpful for you. Now, let's go deeper, okay? So we touched the first aspect of the situation. The first aspect of the situation is people are set up and structured and still trying to live in the old era. What's the old era, Samuel? The old era is where you are playing with records in a time where we've gone on to CDs or where we've gone on to cassettes. If you understand what I'm talking about, just write I do in the chat so I know you understand what I'm talking about. But we're not in that era anymore. We've gone so far past that era. So people like Jill, who used to work in a record making factory, are so far behind, they're getting left behind. And you don't want that to be your story. But unfortunately, this is how the property game is rigged against you. This is why, statistically, the rate at which people's salaries are increasing and the rate at which property prices are increasing have no correlation anymore. Property prices, they say, in a bad year, are going up between 6 to 9% every year. Salaries in a good year are going up at 1% per year. I want you to think about that mathematically. And this has been going on for over 3 decades. So if for over 3 decades, each year property is going up by 6 or 9%, and for over 3 decades, in its best years, your salary is going up by 1%, you should understand that the gap is getting widened and widened and widened and widened as things go along. And this is why, this is just part of the pieces of the puzzle where the property game is rigged against you. So let's go deeper. So someone like Jill, who works in a company where they create records, that's cool for the 30 years, but then they move on. Why? Because when time changes, your skills have to change. If your skills don't change, you get left behind. So let's assume Jill doesn't upgrade her skills. What happens? Jill is still in the era of records, but everyone else has moved on to the era of tapes. Now, what happens when we move from the era of tapes into the era of CDs? Well, Jill's in an even worse predicament because Jill is still having the same level of skill, okay? But it gets worse. How does it get worse, Samuel? It gets worse because after the 20 years of listening to music via cassette tape, we didn't have another 20 years of listening to music on CDs. We only had like a decade. I remember going to secondary school, and at the time I went to secondary school, we would have the CD Walkman, okay? The CD version of the Walkman we had with tapes. And we'd walk around with those weird wire headphones on our head, listening to CDs. But here's the funniest thing. By the time I left secondary school, which isn't even 10 years long, secondary school is 5 years long. By the time I left secondary school, we no longer used those CD Walkmans. Why? Because something else came in, all right? For those of you who know, and for those of you who don't, here's a history lesson. By the time I left secondary school, what came in is called MP3s, okay? These were media players and media pieces which no longer needed physical attribution anymore. They didn't need the big record that you'd have to go to West End to buy the record. They didn't need the cassette tape that you could buy at the church if you were buying a sermon, or you could buy from HMV if you were going to buy that. They didn't need the CD anymore that you could buy out of the boot of the bootlegger's car who was selling you the most up to date hip hop, whatever your taste is. You didn't need that anymore. They didn't need the CDs that you could go and buy, which the church was burning on their duplication. Guys, it was of no need anymore. Why? We had the MP3. The MP3 changed the game. But here's something that's even deeper. The MP3 was not around as long as the CD. The MP3 did a stint of like 5 years. And then after that 5 years, we were out of the MP3 era. Now, here's the thing that's interesting. First thing that was interesting to me was that the record era lasted for 30 years. Another thing I found interesting was that the cassette tape era lasted for around 20 years. Another thing I found interesting was that the CD era lasted around 10 years, but the MP3 era only lasted around 5 years. Now, hopefully you guys are seeing a pattern, and the question you should ask yourself is why? Why is it that we went from records to tapes to CDs to MP3s, and every single time we transitioned, the time frame got shorter? Well, I'm here to tell you why. Because it's the same reason how and why the property game is rigged against you. It's because the implementation of technology democratizes industry. So as technology comes in more and more and more and more, what happens is more people are being left behind. I hope you understand this, because this is the reason that the property game is rigged against you. Now, let's start unpacking this as it relates to property. First thing you should identify here, the time. As we go through this process, the time frames are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. That's the first thing you should recognize. The time frames are getting smaller throughout the process. So that's the first thing you should be thinking about. Hold on a minute, Samuel, how do I make sure that I'm not left behind in light of the time? Now, I'm going to give you an acronym to show you why, right? What Jill needs to do is the same thing you need to do. It's the same thing I need to do. It's just simple, right? But it's what needs to be done. Let me tell you what needs to be done first. The first thing that all of us need to do is we need to learn to move with the times. Now, you might be thinking, Samuel, move. Why do I need to move with the times? Here's why you need to move with the times. Because when Jill is working in the record store, creating records, and the whole world starts listening to music on cassette tapes, Jill's information becomes what I call moldy. It becomes moldy, okay? Just like bread, when you leave it, it becomes stale. Now, what gets worse is if Jill doesn't do anything about her moldy skills, when we transition from the cassette tape era into the CD era, what happens to Jill's skills now is not only do they become moldy, they now become obsolete. Jill literally is becoming left behind. The information she has, the skill set she has, the tool set she has, the mindset she has, everything for Jill is literally becoming obsolete. She's not able to fend for herself in the current era. Why? Because we are now 2 eras ahead of her. We're now 2 eras on. We're not in the record era anymore. We're not in the cassette tape era anymore. We're now living in the CD era. What is Jill gonna bring to the table? The answer is nothing. And no prizes for consolation either. Because Jill decided to leave herself out in the cold whilst everyone was moving on, making sure they didn't get mold. I want you to think about this, because this could actually be, without me being too rude, your situation right now. Imagine if you are attempting to generate revenue from real estate and property in an old fashion. Imagine if you are attempting, at the time I'm literally speaking, to generate revenue in your current business using old methodologies of the Jill era, even though we've moved on to a new era. So when Jill is making records in the record era for the 30 years, she is fine. She's prime. She's doing everything in the right time. But when we move on to the cassette tape era, Jill's information is now moldy. It's not necessary. It's not needed. Then we transition to the CD era, and now Jill's information has become obsolete. There is no iota of information that Jill brings to the table that's relevant to us. And then it gets deeper when we shift into the MP3. Because when we shift into the MP3, now Jill's skills become void. They literally become void. They literally become useless. They literally become to a predicament that there is nothing she can do unless she's going to up-level her skills. There's nothing she can do unless she's going to become new. There is nothing she can do in order to make her skills any more true. Why? Because she did not move with the times. And this is why I give you this acronym, because the reality is we're not even in the MP3 era anymore. We've moved even on from there. Some of you know what I'm talking about, some of you may not. So for those of you who do not, let me break it down and make it clear. At the time of doing this session right now, at the time of speaking to you on this live right now, let me tell you the era we're in. We are in the vaporware era. The vaporware era, Samuel, I've never heard of that. What's the vaporware era? The vaporware era is the era where we no longer even have files to listen to music. We now borrow the music or rent the music through means of third-party platforms such as Spotify or Apple Music and so forth and so forth. And that's why we call it vaporware, because there is no software, there is no hardware, there's literally just vaporware. You're streaming, you're borrowing the technology rather than actually owning or having the technology. And the reason why this is super powerful is because what happens now is when Jill is only prepared for the record era and we transition into the cassette tape era, her information becomes moldy. When Jill is only prepared for the record era and we transition into the CD era, her information becomes obsolete. But when Jill is only prepared for the record era and we transition into the MP3 era, her information is literally void. But when Jill is only prepared for the record era and we've transitioned, we've helicoptered, we have literally manifested a whole new world in a whole new world by moving to a whole new world. Guess what happens now? Jill now, in terms of her skill, and I'm not saying this about Jill's life, because Jill, I'm sure, is a beautiful, productive person in society, okay? I'm not saying this about Jill's life, but I'm saying this about Jill's skills. Jill's skills now become extinct, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the reason this is super powerful is because this illustration clearly presents to you what's happening in the property industry, what's happening in the property landscape, why exactly and how the property game is rigged against you. The reason and the way that the property game is rigged against you is because the property game has moved on from the time frame that you are attempting to play property in. If you're still trying to play property like an old school quote unquote landlord, and it's interesting because on day one of the cash flow creation week that we're currently on right now, we literally finished day 4 a few hours ago. And on day 1, I was teaching them about the look lord, the landlord, the leap lord, and the leverage lord. And I was breaking down to them these 4 different characteristics, these 4 different stages that we've seen through these 4 different ages. And I was showing them how to make sure that they can create consistent and colossal cash flow in spite the change of the landscape. And it was that on day 1, which I think was the seed, the genesis of why on day 4, I was like, look, I want to go live this week and I'm doing the cash flow creation week. I don't think I'm going to be able to go live, but I've got to go live just to share with people why you have to move with the time. Yes, I get it. Right now, the time might be an obscene time of the day for me here in the UK. But I understand that if nobody tells you that you have to move with the time, you are going to be subjected to staying in the same time, staying in the same place, fighting the same wars. There we go. There we go. We were recording the audio, even though it wasn't coming through. Imagine that. So let me ask this question. Imagine if you're just like Jill. Imagine if you're in a situation just like Jill, where you are living in that record era whilst the whole world in their property businesses have transitioned. They've moved to new strategies. You see, there was a time when I was working in 2015 where everybody was saying you have to do HMOs. And let's just assume that that's like the record era. And then we transitioned to a time where everyone was like, well, you have to do service accommodation. And let's say that service accommodation was just like the cassette tape era. And then there was a time where people were saying, listen, this is what you got to do. Supported living. And let's say that was just like the CD era. The question is, what's the MP3 era for you now? The question is, what's even deeper? Like I mentioned, we've now gone into the vaporware era. What's the vaporware era for you now? Because I submit to you that most people don't know what to do when they are actually facing the era that's new. So I wanted to do this video, didn't want to stay around too long, but definitely wanted to add value to you guys. If you've got value from this training, if you got value from this breakdown, just write the word value in the chat. Maybe even throw your key takeaway in the chat. And I'm gonna love you guys. I'm gonna leave you guys, and I'm gonna let you guys level up as you understand that you have to move with the times. Because if you don't, your information will become moldy. Your skills will become obsolete. Your situation will become void, and ultimately you'll end up in a situation where financially you become extinct. I don't want that to be your story, which is why I'm doing this session. So good day, God bless, let's make it happen, and I'll see you on the next one. Let's go.
Come off the 5-day challenge.
Samuel, your energy was something special tonight. I felt it.
There is so much knowledge Sam gives, he leaves it all on the floor.
It has been very illuminating. It has been very informative. Learned so much already. It's just amazing.
It's fantastic.
I did learn a lot of things today, like a lot of things.
You're a genuine team, and I feel blessed.
You're learning from the other questions that are asked. Then you get, me personally, got some key information that have saved us thousands of pounds because we were about to go down the wrong route.
You brought me to the realization of how much I have done some crazy, very stupid things that I feel really not proud of at the moment. They've been, I have been illuminated.
I love the fact that Sam gives us resources to go and read outside of the room. I love all the challenges. I just love everything.
My goodness, it felt like I was in a different world entirely.
I can say, hand on heart, I have never heard such a spiritual presentation to do with business and cash flow from such a genuine place.
Yes, he gives us everything.
I want to achieve knowledge, actionable knowledge, and I've got that already in day one. So thank you so much.
It's mind-blowing.
Inspiration, education, encouragement, debunking myths, opening of eyes, deep revelation. That's all I can say, guys.
To learn about the practicalities of what cash flow means and the legacy I can give to my family, my children, that I can replace myself with assets without having to rely on other people. It's just blown me away.
This is day one. I'm looking forward to the rest of the 4 days.
I can't wait for day 2.
I'm looking forward to the rest of the 5-day challenge.
I've seen the light. Yeah. Thank you. And thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
5-day challenge.